The White House has made its first comment since President Trump sparked a row by saying that NATO troops had stayed a little off the front lines during the war in Afghanistan. Britain's Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said the words were insulting and appalling. Prince Harry, who served in Afghanistan, has called for the sacrifices of NATO soldiers to be spoken about truthfully and with respect. While the White House's deputy press secretary said that Mr. Trump was right to have stressed that America's contribution to NATO dwarfed those of other countries. There was no direct response to the outrage caused. Lee Milner reports.
From the Times to the Express, newspapers across the nation led this morning with a single demand: an apology from President Trump. It comes after his comments sparked outrage and offence, belittling the sacrifices made by NATO and British troops during the Afghanistan war in 2006.
It seems like the White House finally spoke up after President Trump stirred up some controversy with his comments on NATO troops in Afghanistan. The Prime Minister of Britain, Sir Keir Starmer, didn't hold back, labeling Trump's words as insulting and appalling. Even Prince Harry, who has first-hand experience serving in Afghanistan, chimed in, emphasizing the importance of honoring the sacrifices made by NATO soldiers with truth and respect. A deputy press secretary mentioned that Trump was right in pointing out that the United States' contributions to NATO are far greater than those of other countries, but there wasn't any real acknowledgement of the upset his comments caused. Across the country, newspapers from the Times to the Express made it clear this morning they want an apology from President Trump. His remarks have truly offended many, seeming to belittle what British and NATO troops endured during the Afghanistan war back in 2006. Shifting gears to Trump himself, he's honestly in a bit of a panic right now, probably more than his usual bravado suggests. Legal experts are discussing something that must keep him awake at night: prison. We're not talking about a short stay in a minimum security facility or even house arrest at Mar-a-Lago with an ankle monitor. The reality is he could be looking at spending his entire life behind bars. When you delve into the numbers, they're quite shocking. A political analyst calculated that the maximum penalties for Trump's federal and state charges could stack up to a staggering 641 years in prison. Of course, no one realistically expects him to be stuck serving that kind of time, as it's just not feasible. But the fact that his legal troubles could amount to centuries as opposed to mere years shows how severe his situation really is. Looking at more realistic sentencing estimates from experts in the field, the classified documents case alone could land him between 17 to 22 years. For someone who's 79 years old, that's pretty much a life sentence. And just a quick note:
we have never really asked anything of them. You know, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little back.
The conflict was triggered after the US asked for NATO allies to help battle the Taliban in the aftermath of the September the 11th attacks. Robert Dickett's from Kent lost his only child, Oliver, who was based in Helmand, the scene of the heaviest fighting. He was one of the 457 British service personnel who died.
President Trump needs to get his history right. His knowledge of history is completely farcical.
So here's the deal. Trump isn't heading to prison anytime soon. He's still the president of the United States, and there's a Department of Justice policy that says you can't indict a sitting president. Plus, the Supreme Court has given him some protections for official actions. He's got a level of political power that keeps him safe from the kind of accountability that regular folks encounter. But here's where it gets interesting. That political protection isn't forever. It relies on him hanging on to power and Republicans managing to keep enough control to block any prosecution. If the legal landscape changes, or if he's no longer in office, things could shift dramatically. He'd suddenly be exposed to legal risks that could potentially land him in prison for life. That's not just exaggeration. It's what the law indicates and what the evidence seems to suggest. It's clear why he's so eager to hang on to power and why he's nervous about losing it. Former Special Counsel Jack Smith pointed out just how serious things are when he testified before Congress in January 2026. He told lawmakers that the evidence backing his federal indictments against Trump was solid enough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump partook in criminal activity. He mentioned he would press the same charges again with the same evidence, and he stressed how serious the Espionage Act and obstruction charges are, especially because they involve highly sensitive materials and intentional concealment. It's exactly the kind of behavior that typically leads to heavy consequences. It's really striking to think about the reality of Donald Trump's situation and how much prison time he could face if he's found guilty. A lot of people don't realize that this isn't just about partisanship or political games. It's grounded in actual federal sentencing guidelines that apply across the board. When Jack Smith presented his findings, he wasn't just sharing personal opinions. He was clearly stating the facts from his investigation. Under oath, he told Congress that Trump is a criminal, deserving of prosecution and imprisonment. The only thing holding that back has been timing and politics, not the strength of the evidence against him. Let's look closely at the numbers because they show why Trump is feeling so uneasy. Understanding the potential prison time is key here. With the classified documents case, Trump's exposure is quite serious. He's facing multiple counts under the Espionage Act for keeping national defense information, each carrying a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. And it's not just one count. There are several, each representing a different classified document he improperly kept. Add them all up, and you're already talking about decades behind bars. But it doesn't stop there. The obstruction charges are even heavier. Trump was accused of obstructing justice by trying to conceal those classified documents from investigators, lying to his own lawyers, directing others to move boxes around, delete security footage, and resisting efforts to recover materials that really belong to the American people. Each obstruction of an official proceeding comes with a maximum 20-year sentence for just one count. With multiple obstruction-related charges involved, it's no wonder the legal experts at Just Security ran their analysis on the sentencing guidelines and came up with concerning conclusions. In short, the numbers paint a bleak picture for Trump, possibly leading to a realistic outcome where he could spend the rest of his life in prison if he's ever held fully accountable for his actions. Trump's situation is looking pretty grim, to say the least. There's the whole drama with the documents where he faces serious charges for his leadership role in a conspiracy, essentially abusing the trust placed in him as a former president and obstructing the investigation. Legal experts have crunched the numbers and believe he could be facing a guideline range of about 210 to 262 months. That translates to roughly 17.5 to 22 years in federal prison just for that case alone. But wait, there's more. We can't forget the election interference charges. Special Counsel Smith has hit Trump with a whole range of serious allegations, including conspiracy to defraud the United States and obstruction of an official proceeding. We're talking about his attempts to overturn the 2020 election, pressuring state officials, the whole fake elector scheme, and even leaning on Mike Pence. Each obstruction charge could tag on up to 20 years, and the conspiracy counts carry hefty penalties too. When experts took a look at the potential guideline ranges for the election case, they estimated it could be an additional 5 to 9 years, depending on the jury's verdict and any enhancements that apply. So, if you do the math, we could be staring down the barrel of more than 25 years in federal prison, and that doesn't even factor in the state charges yet. Then there's Georgia, where Trump has racketeering charges looming. He was indicted in Fulton County under Georgia's RICO statute for his involvement in trying to overturn the election results in the state. Remember that infamous phone call where he asked Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to find enough votes? Yeah, that's key to this case. The RICO charge in Georgia comes with a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison, and there are also several counts of making false statements to government officials, each carrying up to 5 years. When you add up all those charges in Georgia, we're looking at decades more of potential prison time on top of what he faces federally, and federal pardons won't do him any favors here. Lastly, we have the New York case where Trump has already been found guilty. The Manhattan District Attorney slapped him with 34 felony counts of falsifying business records linked to hush money payments made to Stormy Daniels. Each of those counts could result in up to 4 years behind bars. Overall, it's a pretty astonishing legal mess he's in, and things aren't looking good for him at all. Donald Trump has been convicted on all 34 counts he faced. Now, while that sounds intense, the maximum prison time he could theoretically face adds up to 136 years. But sentences usually don't stack up that way. They often run at the same time instead of one after another. In the end, Judge Juan Machan didn't put him behind bars, didn't give him any fines, and didn't throw him on probation. All he received was the conviction itself. A lot of folks felt like Trump got off pretty lightly, and honestly, they have a point. The judge did mention that an average person facing similar charges would likely be looking at a much tougher sentence. But considering Trump was a president-elect at the time, and all the constitutional stuff that came into play, things got a bit tricky. The key takeaway here is that Trump is now officially a convicted felon. A court determined beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed those 34 felonies. This conviction sticks whether or not he actually serves time. Now, let's connect the dots and see the whole picture. There's a documents case that could mean anywhere from 17 to 22 years in prison based on the guidelines. Then there's an election case that might lead to 5 to 9 years. As for the Georgia RICO case, that could add up to 20 years on top of more time for additional counts. So while the New York case landed him a conviction but no actual prison time, it does solidify his status as a felon. So what does all of this mean in practical terms? Why isn't Trump behind bars now if things look so severe? What's shielding him? And what would have to change for life in prison to be a real possibility? Getting to grips with the difference between Trump's legal troubles and his current situation is crucial for understanding the political dynamics of any potential second term. He's not just clinging to power because he loves being president. He's fully aware of what losing could mean for him. Let's break down the factors keeping him out of prison and how any of those could shift. The first and most vital protection is, let's dive into what's happening with Trump and the protections he has in place. First of all, there's this long-standing Department of Justice policy that says a sitting president can't be indicted or prosecuted. The idea behind this is that legal actions could mess with the president's job, which makes sense in theory. It's not something you'll find in the Constitution, just a guideline that has been followed by every administration. So while Trump is in office, federal prosecutors can't bring any charges against him. In fact, all those cases that Jack Smith was working on hit a standstill as soon as Trump took office. The evidence is still there, but the action just can't go anywhere while he's president. This is a huge reason why Trump is so eager to secure a victory in 2024, and why he's even looking ahead to 2028 and beyond. Every day he stays in power is another day he dodges possible legal trouble. Then there's the Supreme Court's ruling in the Trump versus United States case, which gives presidents some immunity for actions taken while in office. Now, this ruling wasn't as broad as Trump hoped. The court didn't give him absolute immunity for everything. Still, it does offer some significant legal shielding. Prosecutors now have to separate official actions, which might be covered under this immunity, from unofficial ones, which definitely aren't. That adds a layer of complexity to any prosecution and gives Trump's legal team more chances to argue their case. On top of that, there's the political landscape. As long as Republicans hold enough sway in Congress to block impeachment and removal from office, Trump is pretty insulated from that level of accountability. He can also stack the Justice Department with supporters, which helps keep federal prosecutors from coming after him. Plus, Trump knows he needs to keep the backing of the Republican base because elected officials in his party are hesitant to make a move against him. When he warned Republicans about the risk of impeachment if they lose the midterms, he was totally aware that his legal fate is closely linked to political outcomes. If the Democrats flip the House, impeachment could easily become a reality. And if they snag the presidency in 2028, a new attorney general could breathe life into those federal cases. So really, his survival in the political arena is tied to holding on to power. Last but not least, we can't forget about the statute of limitations, which plays its own role in this entire picture. Time limits come into play when it comes to criminal charges, and the clock is definitely ticking for Trump. His game plan seems to revolve around staying in office as long as possible, since that might buy him enough time to delay prosecutions and potentially let some charges become time-barred. It's pretty clear why his legal tactics focus heavily on delaying the inevitable. Every motion he files, every appeal he takes up, and every procedural point he argues is all about running out that clock. If he can stretch this out to 2029 without facing prosecution, sure, some of his legal troubles might eventually fade away, although not all of them. Now, if we're thinking about what would actually need to happen for Trump to end up behind bars, a few key changes come to mind. First off, he'd have to leave the White House. Whether that's by losing an election, hitting term limits, getting impeached and removed, or even dying in office while he's still president, federal prosecution is pretty much a non-starter. Secondly, a future administration would have to be brave enough to pursue charges against him. That's a bit of an unknown, since some folks suggest that going after a former president could stir up division or set a risky precedent. Still, Jack Smith has shown solid evidence that supports charges against Trump and has indicated he would go after them again. So it's possible that a future attorney general could jump back into the fray to continue where Smith left off. Then there's the part where Trump would actually need to lose in court. He's entitled to a trial that comes with all the protections any defendant gets. Sure, there's a chance he could be acquitted, but the evidence against him appears to be pretty strong. Smith himself has stated it proves guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. So, a conviction could very well be within reach. It's important to notice the pattern of special treatment Trump has received so far. Take the New York hush money case, for example. He was convicted of 34 felonies but walked away without any jail time. Judge Mann pointed out that anyone else in his situation would have faced much tougher consequences. Instead, Trump got an unconditional discharge, which is about as lenient as it gets. All thanks to his unique position as both a former and a future president. This has led many legal experts to chatter about a double standard in play. If someone else tried to cover up payments to a porn star like he did by falsifying 34 business records, they'd likely be doing time. But Trump remains a free man because the legal system seems to be struggling to cope with a criminal defendant who is also at the helm of a major political party and has held the presidency. This double standard may shield Trump for now, but it's crucial to note that the courts are indeed willing to convict him. It's becoming clearer that if the political situation were different, Donald Trump would likely be facing prison time right now. The testimony from Jack Smith really underscored the strength of the evidence against him. It's not just a matter of maybe he did something wrong. He really did. Smith laid it all out to Congress, pointing out that the case involves sensitive material that Trump actively hid from investigators, and that this kind of behavior typically leads to severe prison sentences for ordinary folks. It's interesting to think about how if Trump were just an average person who took classified documents and stashed them away from the FBI, he'd probably be in federal prison already, but here he is enjoying protections that come from being a former president, and his political influence allows him to dodge those consequences for now. However, that protection isn't set in stone. Trump realizes something many of his supporters may not. His freedom hinges on keeping his political power. If he loses it, whether through the Republicans not winning or the general political climate shifting against him, the tables could turn quickly. The federal cases against him could be reopened. The Georgia case is still very much alive, and prosecutors could bring new charges to light. And when he eventually does lose that shield of presidency and political allies, he's facing sentencing guidelines that could lead to 2, 3, or even 4 decades behind bars. For someone his age, that essentially means a life sentence, the end of everything he has built and everything he cares about. So it's not about his love for public service that has him fighting to stay in power. It's more about the fear of what losing that power would mean for his future. The chatter about life in prison is getting louder as more people start to grasp this situation. Legal experts are doing their homework, crunching numbers, and sharing some alarming insights. With Smith's testimony confirming serious evidence and courts already convicting Trump of criminal behavior, even if he doesn't go to prison just yet, every little piece of news seems to bring him closer to a harsh reality. Every new update just paints a clearer picture of Trump's serious legal troubles. He might shout about witch hunts and claim he's being politically targeted, bashing prosecutors and judges along the way, but none of that changes the reality. The evidence is there, the charges are laid out, and the sentencing guidelines don't magically adapt to his whims. If he loses his grip on political power, facing life in prison isn't just an empty threat. It could be something he really has to worry about. If you want to stay up to date on everything happening with Trump's legal issues and get a grasp on what those charges really mean for him and the potential prison time he's looking at, this is the place to be. I'll keep you posted on these cases as they unfold, breaking down the legal stuff in a way that's easy to understand. We're dedicated to bringing you the real story, even when Trump and his supporters try to brush it off as fake news. So go ahead and hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to be in the